Live from Los Angeles, this is Lights On. I'm Jessica Denson. Please, if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel where you are watching this. For our regular Lights On audience, you know this show is a movement. When I am not doing this show, I am out in the streets speaking at protests, organizing protests. I have been so honored and grateful to be part of an incredible movement that sees this blatant, naked authoritarianism of this Trump regime that this week has been on full display, probably like never before, and understands that the remedy to this is not mitigating the sabotage of American democracy, but ending it, demanding immediate constitutional removal of this administration from power. They are, of course, an illegal administration. Donald Trump is prohibited from holding the office he holds in violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment for having engaged in and incited a deadly insurrection against our nation's capital. The same man who at the beginning of this week, listen to the irony, claimed that he may invoke the Insurrection Act against the citizens of this country to go beyond the Posse Comitatus Act that prohibits him from using the military in the streets of this country, as he is attempting to do right now. As I mentioned, I am in Los Angeles. It has been a pretty normal week in 99.9% of this city. And what Donald Trump has wanted to do, his game plan, his dictatorial intention from day one has been to create chaos and disorder, to have a predicate to strip all constitutional rights from the citizens and have a complete power grab. It's actually really interesting to look at what is going on right now with Donald Trump and his administration and what's happening in Israel, with Israel bombing Iran and provoking Iran. You know, these two guys are people that I think are case studies in one another and the sabotage that they create in their own democracy or attempted democracy. And a lot of people, I think, would question whether Israel is really a democracy, but the damage they do to their own citizens. Look at Benjamin Netanyahu. Like Trump, a corrupt criminal leader. He was under criminal indictment, facing charges for corruption in Israel before October 7th. He had warnings about October 7th from the female IDF officers on the southern border of Israel, warning him about that attack. He, of course, was in coalition with Hamas, giving them millions of dollars to undermine the Palestinian Authority and prevent the really peaceful coexistence of the Israeli and Palestinian people. But he did not pursue that path. He allowed October 7th to happen, if not planned it in coalition with Hamas, as a mass distraction from his blatant corruption and criminality. Do you know that today is 1 year from the day, June 13th, 2023, that Donald Trump was indicted with his aide, Walt Nauta, on 38 felony charges in Miami for illegal retention of classified documents? I mean, we are watching the illegal, unthinkable, fascist attempted takeover democracy from this criminal administration on a daily basis. We almost might sometimes lose sight of the crimes that he's already committed. Indicted in 4 different jurisdictions, convicted of 34 felony counts in one of them. A Russian asset, Jeffrey Epstein's best friend, that just 1 week ago was the major conversation because of his rift with Elon Musk and how even Elon Musk was calling this out and demanding his impeachment and removal. This is who we are dealing with. A lot of people in the Democratic congressional space over the past few days, in light of the unbelievable scene that played out at a press conference held by puppy killer and completely unqualified sicko Kristi Noem, the attempted questioning of Senator Alex Padilla that resulted in him being tackled to the ground and handcuffed by federal agents. In response to that, a lot of lawmakers have been coming out saying we need accountability. We have to demand accountability. I saw Senator Cory Booker tweet out, now is the time for accountability. Representative Maxwell Frost led a march through the halls of Congress yesterday. What is accountability if accountability is not impeachment and removal of this administration? What is accountability? Now is the moment for these lawmakers to come to that side. I'm going to play a clip of one of them who I have been, how do I say this nicely, disappointed in. This is somebody who is a constitutional scholar who I have looked up to immensely for his adherence to the Constitution, for his care and commitment to the rule of law. And he, like every single member of that body, let us down on January 6th by certifying the election of this illegal president in violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And he was the one that a lot of people were looking to for leadership on this issue. Yes, I am talking about Jamie Raskin. Jamie Raskin was also believed to have been at the forefront of pressuring Representative Shri Thanedar, who promised on this show to invoke Rule 9 and force a vote on his articles of impeachment. Representative Raskin was believed to be at the forefront of those efforts to pressure him not to do that, to not put Raskin and all of his colleagues and all of the Democratic leadership on the spot and on the record as to where they stand on this administration and their fascism and their criminality. But this was a comment just today by Representative Raskin. Listen for the word impeachment. Is he finally coming around? Because if not now, when? This is what we need to be demanding of every single lawmaker. Are you for impeachment and removal of this administration or not?
We have no kings here, we have no queens here, we have no emperors, we have no dictators, we have no despots, and we have no serfs and no slaves and no subjects. And none of us is a subject to Donald Trump. None of us is a subject to Mike Johnson. We are all citizens. Those of us who aspire and attain to public office are nothing but the servants of the people. And the minute that somebody in public office thinks that they're a king, they're a queen, they're an emperor, they're a dictator, that is time for the people to evict, eject, reject, impeach, try, convict, and start all over again. Because the most important words of our Constitution are the three first words of the Constitution: we the people.
All right, Representative Raskin. So thank you very much for that clarity. It's time for you and all of your colleagues in the leadership position, especially that someone like you has, to start putting your money where your mouth is. We have two already pending articles of impeachment in the House of Representatives. The ones filed by Representative Shri Thanedar, 7 or 8, if I'm remembering correctly, articles. We have the one filed by Representative Al Green that he has promised me personally and all of you and the impeachment warriors, as he calls us, to force a vote on before the end of this month. Co-sponsor Representative Green and Representative Thanedar's articles of impeachment. Call for an impeachment vote yourself. Invoke Rule 9. Do you know that any member of Congress can invoke that rule? It doesn't actually have to be the member of Congress who filed the articles. Representative Raskin, if he really believes every word that he said right there, could be taking a day like yesterday with this egregious takedown of Senator Padilla, which, by the way, is not the only arrest of a federal lawmaker. This week, remember Representative LaMonica McIver, the Black Congresswoman from New Jersey, who was part of that oversight mission to the ICE facility in Newark, was indicted, literally indicted for protesting that ICE facility, indicted on charges of impeding and interfering with law enforcement officials. This is how they are treating. We are at the point where political opponents, where people exercising their oversight from our representatives, the representatives of the people exercising their oversight, are being arrested and thrown to the ground and handcuffed. Why not take an opportunity like yesterday to do something extremely disruptive to them? They're trying to create all this chaos. Why don't you start creating some chaos for them? Invoke Rule 9 on the floor of the House. Don't just give emotional speeches about how outrageous it is. Actually use the tools at your disposal. I'm going to read from this article that is kind of, you need to understand, you need to separate between the performative politics and what sounds really good and the stars of the Democratic Party that have these platitudes that make you feel good, and look at what they are actually doing and demand that they actually take action. This article is from David Dyer at the American Prospect. I'm going to just read directly from it. It says, shortly after Senator Alex Padilla was repeatedly shoved, thrown to the ground, and handcuffed inside a federal building in Los Angeles while trying to ask Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem a question about immigration enforcement, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer interrupted business on the Senate floor. Quote, I just saw something that sickened my stomach, the manhandling of a United States senator. We need immediate answers to what the hell went on, Schumer said. I don't know what answers he wanted. The Padilla incident was captured on tape, and there wasn't much left to the imagination. The interesting context is what Schumer actually interrupted. His outraged comments came right after the Senate advanced a substitute amendment to the Genius Act with the assistance of 16 Democrats. If Schumer and his fellow Democrats were truly sick to their stomachs, and I believe they were, over witnessing representatives of a Republican administration assault one of their colleagues, why are they continuing to collaborate with Republicans legislatively? In theory, you can compartmentalize actions happening outside legislative votes with the votes themselves. But in this instance, cooperating with a Republican Party that keeps arresting, indicting, and detaining the political opposition on a bill that would place congressional sanction on corruption in the digital asset space, including that personally conducted by Donald Trump, as well as severely destabilizing the financial system, cannot be blindly forgotten without some highly situational ethics. They will continue to stern letter us into fascism, one former Senate staffer told me. You must separate. There's Mark. We're going to bring him in a second. You must separate between these people's platitudes and their speeches and their actual actions. See what they're actually doing. And when they're not taking action, you must demand that they do. You must absolutely demand that they do. It most certainly is what I will be demanding tomorrow. I will be with the No Kings rally in Los Angeles. This major No Kings rally in Los Angeles taking place right in front of City Hall. I am live streaming the entire event. If you can't be with us in Los Angeles, here on Lights On the Jessica Denson YouTube channel, very excited to be partnering with 5051 DC. I'm sorry, 5051 SoCal. So many partnerships going on. So excited to be partnering with 5051 SoCal on this. I will also be speaking. There'll be about a dozen or more of us speaking. There will be a march. This is expected to be one of the multitude of massive protests tomorrow across this country as Donald Trump uses and exploits the military to run tanks down the streets of Washington, D.C. on his birthday, the same time exploiting the military against American citizens, trying to get them involved in law enforcement, which is essentially what they are doing by supporting the operations of ICE, all of these National Guards and Marines that he is sending into Los Angeles. This is not their legal role. They are not allowed to engage in law enforcement unless the Insurrection Act is invoked to surpass posse comitatus, okay? Unless the insurrectionists in chief, illegal president invokes the Insurrection Act, which, don't hold your breath, it could come at any time. That would allow him to truly mobilize the American military against its citizens. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? If we are not ready to impeach and remove this administration that has shown us by so many actions, by defiance of court orders, by trying to stoke unrest. This week, Donald Trump tried to claim that he restored peace to the city of Los Angeles. No, what Donald Trump did was, first of all, maybe just try to have a mass distraction from the feud that was happening with him and Elon Musk and the exposure of his connection to Epstein and abuse of young girls. Maybe that's really what it was about. But the bigger picture is Donald Trump has long been wanting to create a conflict in the streets of the United States, to create a conflict that enables him to have no guardrails and be the dictator that he has always aspired to for as long as he's been reading Hitler's speeches, like his ex-wife, who is now buried in a very, very heavy casket on his golf course and died right before her NDA expired. like that wife told lawyers in a deposition he had next to his nightstand Hitler's speeches. This is who we're dealing with. Could not be more serious. I most certainly will be messaging constitutional removal of this administration tomorrow at the No Kings rally that I speak at. I encourage you to go to citizensimpeachment.com and click on their resources tab. These are some examples of some signs that you could bring with you to encourage, be explicit about your demand. We don't just say no kings. We don't just say no tyrants. We tell the crowd, the media, the lawmakers what we are demanding: impeachment and removal. Be explicit. This is the constitutional remedy. For God's sakes, earlier this week when I had Representative Al Green on the show, we brought in legendary impeachment expert, Watergate alum Bruce Fine. And he said, listen, everybody's saying no kings, no tyrants. We don't have to have a king or a tyrant for impeachment. Donald Trump has surpassed the impeachment threshold a long time ago. High crimes and misdemeanors, abuse of power. He does this on a daily basis. Day one of his administration, he pardoned several individuals who committed seditious conspiracy against this country. We are currently living through an insurrection, an internal coup of our republic right now. We're in the 6th month of it. We can't wait anymore. I am really excited to bring in my guest today. He is somebody who I have had the honor of being on with him on his show, the Mark Thompson Show, veteran broadcaster. I really appreciate the work. You know, him and I were one of the few outlets reporting on the possibility, just the possibility and the need to actually check if this known cheater, this fraudster, felon convicted for having cheated in the election in 2016 might have cheated this time, and that we should have just done our due diligence to check that out before we got ourselves into this disaster. He was one of the few to have the courage and have those conversations, and I kind of got to know him because of that. And this is the first time he's coming to Lights On. So Mark, so good to have you. Welcome to Lights On.
It's such a pleasure. It's really great to see you and see you work. And I think you lay out the case so beautifully. You know, you always have. Democrats rolled over after the last election. You know, it was astounding to me, statistically beyond improbable, that Donald Trump would carry all the swing states. And yet there was no pushback. And like the most rational pushback I'd hear was, well, it's so expensive to ask for a recount. You could raise that money needed for a recount in about an hour if you didn't have it. Plus, the Democratic coffers were, you know, overflowing with contributions. So that seemed kind of weak sauce to me as a reason. And the institutionalists within the party, because we started in this place, I'm just so disappointed for all the ways that you have articulated and you continue to articulate that they're playing ball with an outlaw administration. It's certainly not a favor that was returned when Biden was president. You had that clown, Tommy Tuberville, who was standing in the way of all those military promotions. He was the one senator. The one senator was able to blockade all of those military promotions. Those are real lives, real people who've been involved in legitimate service to the country. And you saw the power of one senator. Well, that same power rests in a lot of Democratic representatives.
Every single one.
On the House side,
unanimous consent. Every single one could do it.
Yeah. And so I just am so disappointed because the Democrats have to show that same obstinacy. They have to show that same fight. They have to show that same creativity in making it hard to do some of these things that this administration is getting away with. And then, of course, as you've suggested, I mean, the impeachment, at least a call for impeachment, is a perfectly legitimate call. And they did it. Again, Republicans did it to you, Democrats. They did it over and over and over again. Do you need to be reminded about Benghazi and all of the other ways in which they made life awful and try to get into the news cycle? They're trying to degrade your brand, Democrats. So Republicans, they at least play smart. They also play dirty. And Democrats just don't want to play at all. It's disappointing. It really is.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about this quote that I actually read when I was on Dina Badala's show this week. This is from Heather Marsh. She's written 2 books, one called Stimmergy, How to Create a Mass Movement, and another one called How to Dismantle a Dictatorship. This is from an interview she did with Rolling Stone. She said, the blitzkrieg strategy of regime actions must be turned on them until they are the ones dizzy and overwhelmed with the speed, variety, and unpredictability of opposition tactics. There should be thousands of different things for them to respond to every day. Protests, boycotts, town halls, and legal challenges are happening, but actions need to overwhelm the regime. They need to overwhelm them. Like that's my particular call to lawmakers, because like you said, like Tuberville is one perfect example of how they could be massively obstructing. But we need to start taking a page out of their playbook, like I always say.
Yeah, and I love that we agree on this, and that we see that, you know, a fire needs to be lit under the Democrats politically. I mean, it's a profound disappointment. I think of the Kinzior books. You know, Sarah Kinzior wrote that book, They Knew, I think it's called. It's a great book that details the fact that the complicity of the Democrats is on display. So the place we find ourselves in is a place that we can ascribe blame to Democrats and obviously Republicans. And the other thing on your point about flooding the zone, or, you know, keeping that fire hose of problems turned on them, this is something that I would have thought would have been on some level gamed out, because we knew what their plan was. I mean, Steve Bannon talked about it ad nauseum. We got to flood the zone. The media's our enemy. We heard all about it from Bannon's own mouth. And then we heard about Project 2025. You could read it.
I know.
You could, if you didn't want to read all 900 pages, read an AI reducto on it. It was there. So you knew, my point is, what junctions you had to set up in to somehow blunt the speed with which they were going to institute Project 2025. So when you see their blueprint ahead of time, there are even fewer excuses for not doing something.
Yeah, there really are no excuses whatsoever. So you and I, Mark, you and I are here today with our audience live from Los Angeles, just, you know, not so far away from each other, but LA is a sprawl, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched Jimmy Kimmel a few nights ago, but I thought he gave a very good summary of the truth about what is going on in the streets of Los Angeles. Of course, Fox News has been trying to portray this entire city as on fire, which could not be further from the truth.
Well, and not to interrupt, but that's what Trump is saying. That's what Kristi Noem is saying. They are out there with the city's on fire. Same thing is true of, I was listening to David Sachs talking about that from the Trump administration, that all of them are singing from the same hymnal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really what Fox has always been. And, you know, as a former delusional acolyte of Fox News, or deluded, you know, someone who bought into their brainwashing for years, I remember it so well. I mean, they were always taking little minor incidents and blowing them way, way, way out of proportion. I mean, it's such fear mongering, such really, it's abuse. I mean, what Fox News does, and really this whole situation is like one large abusive cycle. We could even go back to Donald Trump himself being like a mentally ill older man who is that mental illness is being exploited by so many people that want power, of course, including him. But the fact is, the man is deranged. He's lost it. I mean, it's one vast cycle of abuse. And to what end? I mean, literally, Fox News brands themselves with patriotism. That's what had me for so long, Mark. And it's also why I love that No King's Day, especially in LA, is being branded as a flag day. Like, reclaim the American flag. Please bring your American flags. And I heard you talking about this earlier on your show, by the way, about like American flags and Mexican flags. Just bring whatever flag, you know, of a country you want. And if you're an immigrant from another country, fine, but bring the American flag too, please. Yeah. Please bring the American flag. We have to reclaim these symbols of patriotism from these hypocrites and criminals and abusers.
It's a game of images too, which is sort of what I was saying, and I've been saying it since the very first protests. It's a game of images that play internationally and nationally. So even as we understand in Los Angeles, it's Mexican pride, but that doesn't mean it surpasses your American pride or whatever. The rest of the world doesn't know. And so they can play those images of the Waymo vehicles and police cars that have been set ablaze, and they can play them against the Mexican flag, which is in the foreground. And that one image does so much damage. So that's why the American flag is so important. And I love that you point out how critical it is in rallies tomorrow, because that really is part of reclaiming those words: freedom, liberty, patriotism. These are all words that somehow have been co-opted by the right. They've been affixed to various things that are, wildly objectionable, sort of MAGA merch. And as a result, we recoil from using them, or we're anxious about using them because they have an implied sort of right-wing ideology attached. I think it's brilliant to try to bring it back and bring it to the center and the left and those who celebrate freedom and legitimate freedom and liberty this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I encouraged it when I did my rally on March 14th. I've encouraged it in any kind of activism that I've been promoting, because it is vital. It is vital. And that's what we're standing for. I mean, we are literally standing for the founding of this great country, flawed as we are in our pursuit of freedom, against a Russian asset in the White House, Russian asset running the DNI, an administration and cabinet of clowns and unfit abusers, criminals, people who are wholly against the American rule of law and everything that we stand for. There's another letter I wanted to read from, because I've been getting this digest from Citizens Impeachment on all the pro-impeachment sentiment that's really out there. Because, Mark, this is like, I tell my audience, and I say this a lot, like, I've never been to a rally where I've been like, Donald Trump needs to be removed, and the people in the audience are like, meh, we're not quite ready for that yet. I mean, this is what the people want. Like,
Sure.
Over 52% of this country, including 20% of Republicans, Mark, are behind impeachment. And there's this one letter that I wanted to read from. This is from a woman in Loveland, Colorado, Sherry, writing to the Daily Camera, and she's quoting from Alexander Hamilton. And this is actually a quote that Adam Schiff, who I've also been vastly disappointed in recent months, that he quoted in the second impeachment of Donald Trump over the insurrection. But this is a statement that Hamilton made in support of having a provision for impeachment in the United States Constitution. Listen and see how familiar this sounds. Quote, "When a man unprincipled in private life, desperate in his fortune, bold in his temper, despotic in his ordinary demeanor, known to have scoffed in private at the principles of liberty, when such a man is seen to mount the hobby horse of popularity, to join in the cry of danger to liberty, to take every opportunity of embarrassing the general government and bringing it under suspicion, to flatter and fall in with all the nonsense of the zealots of the day, it may justly be suspected that his object is to throw things into confusion, that he may ride the storm and direct the whirlwind." And this was Hamilton's argument for impeachment in the Constitution. That
Hamilton was a bright dude, and he was an amazing part. But now it's been detailed, I know, in the show. But even before the show, I used to. There was talk about taking. And this is just a little digression on Alexander Hamilton, but
please.
there was talk about taking him off of the $10 bill and replacing him with Ronald Reagan. There was a real conversation. It really seemed like it was going to happen. And to me, it was the most grotesque notion and shallow notion. It's just the sycophancy that we now see in Washington around Trump, but with a total disregard for the power and importance of Alexander Hamilton, who really helped get this nation up and going with the money we needed to actually be a viable nation. It's money. It's not always the Revolutionary War and, the guns. All that stuff has to be paid for, and the nation has to operate with money, and Hamilton was a ninja in that way. So, and then to have you read a paragraph from a letter like that, wow. I mean, He understood. And what we have now is the very thing to which he referred to, to which he referred, I should say, in that letter, which is a guy who, is really about self-enrichment and is going to sell the country on down.
Yeah, it's unthinkable. And, I've even some of the clips that I've really appreciated this week is like actual members of our military, some Marines speaking out against what is happening. And this is really an inflection point to, I had a retired Navy commander on a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the military oath. And it is not to a man, it is not to a king or a ruler, it is to our Constitution. They are to follow legal orders. We kind of had this major setback yesterday. We all got this wonderful news that the court had sided with Governor Newsom and was going to restore command of the National Guard to him. It's supposed to happen today at noon. And then just hours later, the appeals court, the Ninth Circuit, a panel of 3 judges, 2 Trump appointees, 1 Biden appointee, put a stay on that ruling. And now I think it's postponed until something like June 17th when they have another Zoom hearing. But for now, the White House and the DOJ got the administrative stay that they wanted. And that basically leaves in place the 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines that Trump has ordered in to supposedly back up ICE raids, which is highly, highly questionable and illegal, as the judge in the district court rightfully ruled.
And you saw Kristi Noem, and you referenced Kristi Noem in your opening remarks, this vacuous, utterly incompetent person heading up the biggest agency and organization in Washington. The Department of Homeland Security is just massive, and it only just keeps getting bigger. Talking about the fact that
she is a piece of garbage, that woman. I have no problem saying it on every level. Sorry.
She wants to, and assures everyone that the Department of Homeland Security, in the form of those who are here, ICE agents and others, all of the FBI, of course, falls under that cloak as well. But in any case, she says everybody's staying here until, in an open-ended way, we can restore order and liberate you. She literally said, liberate you, Los Angeles, from your socialist mayor and governor. Now, I'll remind everybody, the mayor was voted in by a pretty good margin of people who live in Los Angeles. The governor was voted in by a pretty good number of people who live in California. Kristi Noem was voted in by nobody, and she's telling us that she's going to liberate us? It's offensive. It's just offensive. And so you're right. It's illegal. It's repugnant. It's awful. But it continues in an open-ended way unless the courts intercede next week.
Yeah, unless they intercede or unless Congress gets its friggin' act together and starts changing the narrative, that starts changing the tide about what we're all talking about as a country. The courts, everybody has a role. The courts have a role, but Congress cannot abdicate their role. And so far, with very few exceptions, Mark, they have been abdicating their role. Can I ask you a kind of personal question?
Sure.
So you do a show. We were kind of talking about this before we set the live to go, and you were telling me what an undertaking it is to do your show 5 days a week, because I do my show. I've only commit to this live show once a week.
Yeah, I asked, how often do you do it? It's just like sometimes, maximum 3 times a week is what you said, right?
Yeah. But you do. I mean, we both are in this space. You have a storied career as a broadcaster, as an actor. You don't really maybe necessarily have to be doing this right now. Why are you doing this?
Well, I don't do it for the money. There's no money in this. And many a day. I mean, we do it 5 days a week. It's a live show, 11 to 1 on the West Coast, 2 to 4 on the East Coast. I'd love for people to check it out and subscribe, the Mark Thompson Show. But more to the point, I am so grateful many days for having the platform. Yeah. I feel, as do you, so passionately about everything. I felt this way during the Biden administration. There are a lot of issues, they transcend party dominance, of course, and I know you feel the same way. And so to have a platform is a great luxury, and I try to dignify that platform and honor that platform with good guests. We have Pulitzer Prize winning guests. I know you do as well. I mean, people who are great thought leaders, great intellects, great political scientists, great historians. I try to get all of these people into the conversation, also try to have some fun along the way. But
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm balancing the obligation, which some days can be like, ugh, I can't believe the show is starting. And because I also am trying to read and trying to gather all this information and make the presentation as dynamic as possible, you know? And so it just seems like the clock on the wall hits for me 11 a.m. way before I want it to, because there's just so much material. But I'm so grateful to have the platform and an answer to your question or general query. It's just that keeps me coming back.
That's great to hear. Yeah. I mean, I think I share that, and I share that with this audience all the time. Like, and I think I might have even have said it on your show. Like, I don't want to be a podcaster. There are other things that I would like to be doing, but I don't know how. And this is kind of, goes back to the fight that I started in the courts against Trump 8 years ago. Like, I don't know how to live in this moment and not take action and not speak out, and then to have a platform like we are so blessed to have. I mean, our audience and the commitment that they have to being part of our shows and our movement and our calls to action and everything is such an honor.
Yeah. And I just would say this about you. And you really just won me. I always was a fan, but you really won me over when you go to Washington in the coldest, bitter, cold situation. I grew up in Washington D.C., so I went to school. With all
you and I, my friend.
and so we should talk about that another time. But I just when it's going to be the wind chill, it's going to be awful. There are not going to be many people who show up and kind of brave that weather to join you in a righteous fight. But you pursue the righteous fight anyway, as you did. Mad respect. I mean, I really think you show up, and that's a terrific thing.
Well, thank you. Like I've told, my audience, and by the way, we had a very impromptu rally that we set up last week on D-Day, the same day of the Veterans Rally. We had 2 representatives show up for us, a bunch of great speakers right in front of the Capitol, and it was the exact opposite, Mark. We were smothered in that swampy summer heat of Washington, literally dripping all day long. So we've gone from not being able to feel our feet to like dripping.
But if I need a rally set up, I know who to talk to, which is the great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been an honor. And what I say to my audience is like, yeah, I've done this, but I never did this before. I just had somebody came to me with this idea back in December when I was covering Section 3. And they're like, the only way to get any attention or traction is to have an in-person protest. And I'm like, in-person protest? Like, I've never done anything like that. And here we are 6 months later, and, I've organized 2 major protests, and I'm speaking at other ones and leading other ones. And my point is that you can do it. Just say yes. Say yes to not lying down. Say yes to not being silent. Say yes to being one of the people in the history books that was not willing to let this happen on their watch. And understand that each one of you, as small as you may think you are not small at all. You are incredibly powerful, and it is each one of you that is determining where we go right now. Like I always say, Mark, it's not we'll see what happens. It's we are what happens. We are what happens.
So well said. Yeah.
So anyway, I want to make a little announcement with you on today, and this will be news to you too. And I wasn't actually expecting to be able to announce this, but we have an incredible team working in the background to get the website up and everything. We are starting what is called the Removal Coalition. And this is basically a platform simply to amplify the organizations and direct action groups that are committed to constitutional removal of the Trump administration. This is going to live at removalcoalition.org. You can actually go to that URL right now, removalcoalition.org. It's also Removal Coalition on Instagram and Blue Sky. And the reason I set this up, Mark, is because I feel like this is what has been lacking from the protest space. I feel like so many of these protests have been incredible, and to see the Americans engaged has been extraordinary, and such such a measure of hope for us as far as surviving this and not letting democracy die on our watch. But to me, there has been the missing element of messaging and explicit demands and conveying that pressure to the media and to lawmakers. And so my purpose with this is to really elevate the removal demand of the protest and direct action space and force people to pay attention to it.
It's a great idea, and I completely agree. There's so many disparate calls for so many different things in the overall movement, and in that noise, many can punch through for a little while, but the coherence that you can bring to it is something that you can bring to it, Jessica. I'm glad that there is a place, this removalcoalition.org, where people can essentially organize around an idea, around a cause that marshals a lot of those other disparate causes under one umbrella. I really love that. And I'm going to go there. I'll pledge if you need money, whatever you need, any support, I'm there for you.
What I want to do is I've told all of our coalition members so far, and there you'll see about 8 of them up there now. I expect many, many more. I don't intend to do any independent fundraising, but I encourage people to follow the links to those websites because every one of those organizations needs help.
But let me understand it. Is it a clearinghouse for a lot of these other organizations that we can all find in one place?
Yes.
Almost like a Drudge Report for activism? Is that, if I can pardon the comparison, is that what it is?
Yeah, it's just a centralized hub to amplify
Okay.
the organizations that are committed to this and hopefully encourage others in the activism space to join it, to be explicit in their messaging, and to make this noise, make this demand, this constitutional imperative unmistakable.
Love
This
it.
is what
I'll
has
jump
to
on it. You've got to come on my show and talk about it, and
I would love
we'll get you some more, attention on this. It's terrific. I applaud your activism.
Thank you so much. So, Mark, in all of the chaos that this illegal regime is trying to create around this country, these ICE raids, which are really, even the protests that I see against ICE, I'm like, don't lose sight of the fact they're just using immigration as a wedge issue. They're using anything to try to cause terror and unrest, and the xenophobia behind all of this is so disgusting. It's the fascism authoritarian playbook. But with all of this noise, Mark, are there stories out there do you think that we should be paying attention to that you've been covering on your show that maybe you think are not getting the light they should?
You point to so beautifully what's happening now, and you see how it serves several interests. For example, the Yarvin-esque worship that goes on with the Curtis Yarvin movement associated with the rise of a CEO dictator. That can all be served by what's going on now. The Christo-fascist movement, which can be served as well by what's going on now, right? The rise of a dictator who's more aligned with the Christian right, the alt-right. These are things that all can exist right now because, as you say, it's just in the primordial ooze of an authoritarian regime. It seems, look, what are you talking about? These are like shock troops showing up in Los Angeles. What do you mean primordial ooze? Yeah, because the beginning of total domination and the complete removal of freedom, that is on down the way. And it sounds alarmist, I know, to say it to some people, but it really is what's happening in America. They had an agenda, a stated agenda. They came in, they followed that agenda, and women's reproductive freedoms went away, and you begin to see the power of the chief executive being amplified with the immunity is the word I was looking for, that is conferred to him. And so I see different movements with different end goals, but right now they're all pushing along the same path, and you can see how this path serves them all well. And there'll be a time when they'll split, but that'll be on down the way. And as to where they're going in the hymnal, you can follow Project 2025 and Russell Vogt. He lays it all out there. He's an incredibly powerful figure in Washington at the OMB, and that's a boring agency. People don't pay any attention to it, but it's super powerful. All the money in the feds, all the money sloshes through OMB.
Yeah.
So I just would say that the movements within the movement are the thing I think you can lose track of. And as you've rightly suggested, a lot of this is a cultural wedge issue that wins for Trump people put him in power because of his immigration position. And a lot of this distracts from the long-term goal. And that's what I'd like people never to lose sight of. And I think we can lose sight of it because, to be fair, we're fighting a pretty intense battle right now for basic freedoms around our own communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, just as you're talking, I'm thinking about the disingenuity, how disingenuous the entire conversation about immigration enforcement is. Because if any one of these Republicans that claims that we're under an invasion by illegal immigrants or criminals in this country wanted to stop the flow of immigration to this country, they would start penalizing the white men who hire and employ all of these undocumented immigrants. That is how you stop illegal immigration into the United States. Why don't you go after your buddies who are running the companies that hire these people?
You know, in the 80s, my father, as I say, you know, we both grew up in Washington, D.C. My dad was a constitutional lawyer, and he helped craft a constitutional amendment that would impose sanctions. Well, what you're talking about is employer sanctions. So you are sanctioned for hiring people who are not in the country legally. And of course, you know, in the end, that stuff is DOA. You know what I mean? Because as you've said, the power brokers don't want that. Donald Trump employs people who are not in the country legally. The agricultural fields, the slaughterhouses, the sanitation concerns, the janitorial services, all of these, and so on, the kitchens and the healthcare business. I mean, it goes through our entire economy. These people are vital, many of them, most of them. And so, yeah, in the end, the employer sanctions thing just dies a death, a quiet death.
Yeah, of course. And yet that is the one thing that would supposedly get them after the goal that they're interested in. But it just shows the hypocrisy of the whole entire thing. These people have never been interested in good faith immigration reform. It is a hard problem. There is not a simple solution to it.
You only need to look to last year when you had a bipartisan bill ready to go. If you really cared about immigration on the southern border, you would have passed that. It was your bill, Republicans. You would have had 10,000 more immigration judges. I mean, it's an extraordinary notion that you would expand the immigration judicial system to the point that you could process that pipeline so much more quickly. That additional border security, there were so many things involved in that bill. And I wasn't a supporter of everything in the bill, but the idea that they were finally doing something instead of just using it as a political pawn, I was all for that. But of course, that was knocked off track by Trump, who recognized rightly that he could continue to use immigration as a political tool to attain power. And it worked. But it's always been that, Jessica. And that's kind of what you're saying, you know, the disingenuity. It's real on both sides. Democrats and Republicans have used this issue of immigration constantly, and it's prevented us from actually making any progress.
Yeah. And stuck in the middle are people who are, many of them, I mean, first of all, you have people who are here legally, who are literally showing up to appointments with DHS. They are going through the legal process, and ICE is using that opportunity to seize and detain these people. I mean, that's literally how this whole thing in LA started.
Sure. I mean, there's nothing criminal going on. These people are just the opposite. They're going to the prescribed place at the prescribed time to be there for their immigration hearing. And the ICE agents swoop in and it's really grotesque. Yeah. So these people come here not just for economic opportunity. They're fleeing violence. They're fleeing real hardship in their countries. I'm talking about from the standpoint of the threat of violence to themselves and their family. So they come here seeking asylum. They want to be asylees in this country. Those cases are independent of those who come here for economic opportunity. But all of it is being wrapped into the same mess, and they're being branded murderers, rapists, criminal element. I mean, we all know that on a percentage basis, it's less than 1% of the crew that comes here that falls into that category.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the inhumanity, the cruelty of all of this. I mean, you want to look these ICE officers into the face and in the eyes and say, how can you go to sleep at night? You have children, you have a family, like just get down to the basic humanity of who you are, and can you live with yourself for what you're doing? It's
the deliberate brutality is what I really object to. So you can say, well, I'm an ICE agent. I have a family. I've got to all I do is follow orders. Okay, I get it. But you don't have to be a nightclub bouncer about it. You don't have to throw some 26-year-old woman down to the pavement so her face gets all scraped up. You don't have to separate a man and wife and brutally arrest them, again, roughing them up all the way into the van while their 12-year-old child, who's at a graduation ceremony, cries. It's despicable. It's grotesque. And it's really not what this country is or had been. I mean, the new America is a pretty ugly place. The whole idea and reputation of the ugly American, we've had it for a long time. You know, just the gross American who walks in, rich person. This is all post-World War II. The ugly American. You know, everything was bigger here, wasteful here.
Yeah.
I mean, that was nothing compared to the ugliness that is America now. It's really offensive. And as you say, it's uncalled for, and I think it's immoral and unethical on some level. These guys, even you ICE agents, you could back off and you could have a bit of humanity.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, the level of cruelty is prompting some people, and I would say a tiny fraction, to respond in less than peaceful ways. And that's what they want. Of course, they want that. They want to get to a boiling point. They want to push people so far that they just can't take it anymore. And by the way, I want to make a distinction. Most of the outbursts you have seen or heard about in Los Angeles, that tiny fraction of this city that has had disruption, those are not protesters. Those are just troublemakers and people, you know, agitators coming in to take advantage. But once in a while, you have protesters or people who are against what's going on who do resort to violence, and you can at least empathize, maybe not sympathize, but empathize with their outrage. But this moment, and this would be a call out to everybody engaged in the resistance of this illegal regime on any level. It is so important right now to commit to peace, to commit to peaceful protest across the board. What they want is for you to cross the line. What they want is for you to get so outraged and angry that you do something that ultimately gives you a criminal record or worse, and then gives them predicate to take more of your rights away. Now it is so vital to make that commitment to peaceful protest across the board.
Yeah, that's such a great thing to be reminded of. And I would say that there's a military flex going on here. That's kind of Trump's move. It's a strongman move, you know, and Kristi Noem loves it. There's a fetishization of the military that we do in this country anyway, I think. I mean, you know, camo fatigues and flyovers before NFL games. And these are all things that sort of create this sense of a powerful fighting force, which we have. And as I've said, I have a mad respect for those who actually serve the country legally and honorably. But what you see in Trump and in this strongman playbook is a way to flex that military strength on his own people, and that creates a sort of power in him. It may be an insecurity as a result of poll numbers or whatever, but clearly Noem and others around Noem sign on to that, and that works for them. And it's a kind of strongman propaganda. So you're very right to kind of put out the caution flag, because they are on a hair trigger for this stuff.
Yeah. So do that tomorrow. Come out in the masses. I mean, I really think, Mark, that this is going to be the biggest, obviously, the biggest nationwide protest this country has seen since Trump illegally took office back in January. It is going to be massive tomorrow.
So I'm getting from you that you're not going to go to the military parade? Is that what I'm getting?
No, we are going to be in Los Angeles. I will be speaking in Los Angeles.
Okay. You turned down the military parade offer? That he didn't want you to speak there?
They tried to pay me $100 to be a seat filler, and I said, nope. I stopped being an extra in movies many, many years ago after I got my SAG card. Thank you very much. So yeah, no, this is, I mean, it's going to be huge. If you can get yourself to one of these protests, get yourself there. Tomorrow is going to be a day for the history books. Bring those signs that I showed you. You can get them at citizensimpeachment.com, or really just make your own, but be so explicit about your demands, my friends. We can't squander these opportunities, and we are standing in the breach. Literally, it's us standing in the breach right now. So Mark Thompson, my friend, please check out Mark's show. It's on YouTube. He's got a great show like me right on YouTube, The Mark Thompson Show, and all on audio platforms. You're everywhere too, right?
Exactly. We're on as an audio podcast, and you will be joining us, I hope, as soon as you can manage
As soon as I
a visit.
finish.
So,
yes. I'm a
look forward to
one-woman operation, Mark. So I'm trying to trying to juggle everything.
Well, when you juggle us in, we're happy to have you on. So
wonderful, wonderful.
It was great seeing you.
Great seeing you too, my friend. We'll talk again soon.
Hello.
Bye. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today on Lights On. As I mentioned many times, but I'll say it one more time, I'm going to be speaking and streaming the official No Kings Los Angeles protest tomorrow on Lights On. So if you're not with us in person, check out the live stream. We have it linked up already here on YouTube. You can go to tinyurl.com/5051 live stream, or just check out the Jessica Denson YouTube channel. Again, please make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications on. It starts at 9:30 in the morning Pacific time. We have some amazing speakers lined up from a lot of different organizations and activism spaces. And I will be interviewing several people after the march. So it'll be a really dynamic event. And I can't wait to be there with probably many, I don't want to put a number on it yet, but it's going to be massive. And I'm really excited. So excited to be part of it. Again, I launched the Removal Coalition today. Didn't expect to have the website up, but it's up now at removalcoalition.org, removalcoalition.org. This is a initiative, a coalition to highlight the organizations committed to constitutional removal of this administration and elevate this as the demand of the protest space of the resistance. We can't squander these opportunities. So go to removalcoalition.org and look at all the organizations that are committed to this. We're going to start really amplifying them heavily on social media and encouraging others in the activist space to join us. If you want to support me directly, as always, you can do it at thejessicadenson.com/donate, thejessicadenson.com/donate. Mark was mentioning donating money. If you want to help me in my efforts and my continuing legal battle that goes on to this day, which I need support with, you can do it there. And thank you so much to everyone who has helped and will help. It really is a beautiful support and means the world to me. You can also get merch for this show. I just got this in the mail recently at thejessicadenson.com. Of course, stand out is the motto, and it's on most of the merch for Lights On. Stand out. That's what we need to do. That's what will save us. So thank you, everybody, so much. I'm going to run, get ready for tomorrow. A lot to do before the morning in downtown LA. Be peaceful, be relentless, and demand this administration get out of our house now. All right, my friends, have a wonderful weekend. And as always, let your light shine.